Welcome to Thinking is Contagious. Uh, the, um, the Afghanistan situation. The more time you spend watching, reading to what's going on, listening, the more you realize that no longer is this just that we have a president that's clueless, a vice president that's an incompetent, and a administration that is basically like deer in the headlights, have no idea what they're doing. Uh, but it's beyond that now. It's really concerning as to the safety of the American people. I think that that's the biggest problem that we're facing right now is that American people and America is now at risk because of the ineptitude, the ignorance, really, of this administration. Um, like I said in the prior program, there's 20 years of blood on the hands of presidents on this issue. Uh, I probably give Bush Jr. a little bit of a pass because he was fresh off that September 11th, and he needed to take action, and I think that that's what he did. However, what followed, uh, the two Obama administrations, of which Biden was the vice president, were just what really strengthened the Taliban, what really financed the Taliban. Um, there are so many reports that I've read about how much money we have spent over the last 20 years. A report of over $1 trillion. Um, Lately, the latest figures that I've heard is about $100 billion a year. Um, and what makes this really concerning is, that money is our money. It's taxpayer dollars. But here's the facts that you need to understand. There's no accountability for that money. No one knows where that money's gone, where it's been spent, and how it's been spent. We were told that we were training an army. We were told that we were training forces in order to give the Afghans the ability to rule their country and keep the insurgents, the Taliban, away. Um, and when you hear stories that 20%, only 20% of the soldiers that were paid by the United States, by US dollar, taxpayer dollars, only 20% of those soldiers could read or write, who are we training? When we hear stories that the police force that we're financing or we're paying their salaries, that 50 to 70% of the payroll was ghost employees. When we hear stories about high Afghan officials with multi-million-dollar bank accounts, who is accounting for the US taxpayer dollars? Who is out there to make sure that the money we're spending is in the best interest of this country? There's nobody out there. And I'll tell you why there's nobody out there. Because they're all taking a piece of that pie. That is the feeding trough. And these politicians, directly or indirectly, are all benefiting from that unaccounted for money. And our enemies are getting that US money. No one knows where that's going, but I guarantee you it's one place that it's not going is to America and the American people, where it should be. Now, as far as pulling out of Afghanistan, I agree. I'm not going to be hypocritical. I want to be out of Afghanistan. However, The narrative that we've been fed about what is going on in Afghanistan, okay, the never ending war, that is a lie, okay? There hasn't been a war there for a long, long time. There hasn't been a military action based death in 18 months there. There were 3,000 troops there, U.S. troops. And those troops were there for intelligence and for air support. There was no Americans fighting on the front line, okay? There were no American casualties based on Americans fighting on the front lines for over 18 months. You say the never-ending war. That's what they sold the American people on, the never-ending war. But what you have to understand is that this never-ending war was not really a war. What this was a decision that was made, which is we support the Taliban, who, by the way, have lost 70, 80,000 soldiers in this battle against the Taliban since we've been there helping them. So they have been fighting, but they count on air support. They count on U.S. intelligence. They are not a powerful army. So when Joe Biden comes out and says, oh, they're not willing to fight, they weren't willing to fight to save their country. No, they're willing to fight, but remember, they're very limited, and their training is very limited, and their forces are very limited, okay? And they counted on America for air cover, air support, and they counted on America for intelligence, and they weren't, that was cut off, okay? So the choice that was being made with America's 3,000 troops there was basically, do we allow the Afghans to continue fighting and keep the status quo with the Taliban, not allowing them to gain any ground, gain any foothold in this territory? We keep our 3,000 troops there, or do we pull out completely and turn the country over to the Taliban? They decided to pull out completely and turn the country over to the Taliban. However, the situation has not been represented to the American people this way. It was represented to American soldiers are over there dying. Do you want your children there? Do you want your grandchildren there? This is a never-ending war. This is not what it was. But this is the lie that was sold to you by not just this administration, the Trump administration as well. I have been on the record saying the deal that Trump cut with in Afghanistan, releasing those 5,000 prisoners and getting nothing for it, terrible deal. Biden has overturned how many Trump era mandates has Biden overturned with a stroke of a pen, executive order? How many has he overturned? How come this is the one he chose us to follow? Okay, he's quick to chop everything Trump off immediately. This he follows, and then he says, I had to follow it. Trump had agreed to it. How come you don't follow everything else Trump had agreed to? Then he comes out and tries to justify the pulling out of the troops the way it was done. And there's my problem. Not that we get out of Afghanistan, because I could argue either side, but when you know all the facts, like I've just told you the facts that 3,000 troops there in order to keep the Taliban at bay may be worth it. And with 3,000 troops, believe me, you can pay those troops bonuses, give them all the perks and benefits, and make it a pure volunteer effort. Who's going to want to go there? And I'm pretty sure that you're going to have more than 3,000 people volunteering to be part of that force if they're very well compensated, okay? So that's bullshit. That's not an issue, and that is a lie. And, Biden is the king of lies. A month ago, when they asked him, is there any chance of Afghanistan becoming a Saigon? Oh, that never happened. There's no comparison, he said. It's not the same thing. It was worse than Saigon, what happened in Afghanistan. Biden is a liar. Biden has to lie, because if not, Hunter goes in. Let's understand that. If Biden doesn't follow, say and do whatever he's told by those who pull his strings, Hunter goes in. His brother, I think it's Jim, goes in. Joe goes in. His 48-year political career becomes tarnished. Not that it has anything worth protecting, because he's never done anything. He's a total and complete incompetent, okay? But that gets also struck from the records. So that's all this is. This is blackmail, and he's the Trojan horse that they knew would be palatable enough to get him past the American voting public against Donald Trump, who they made out to be the big bad boogeyman. You have example after example. I told you a few days ago about Biden and his lies and his retracking and going back on things when they asked him, when he ridiculed Trump for saying China was a threat. And he said, you think China can eat our lunch? Come on, man. Remember that? Remember that? Look at China. Right now, China and Russia, China has already gone in to the Taliban with full support to recognize them, not because they're buddy-buddy, but because the rare earths that are contained in Afghanistan, to the tune of trillions of dollars of natural resources that are critical components of the push for clean energy, EVs. They're seeking control of those things. Russia, the same. The entire world is watching as Biden has had his pants pulled down by the Taliban. And he has done that. He was on vacation. Psaki had a auto answer on her voicemail on the weekend when all this is going down. Kamala Harris on vacation, nowhere to be found. We knew she was an incompetent when he said that he was going to seek a woman of color as his vice president. We already knew that the playing field to make the best possible choice for vice president was no longer the entire playing field. It was a very small portion of the playing field. Because if you take those two qualifiers, okay, a woman of color in politics at a level that can fill or come close to having the criteria to fill that position, how many are there? How many people are there? No, he limited. It's like everything else in this country, under the guise of racism, misogyny, gender inequality, under all these smoke screens, the intent is to weaken the American infrastructure, whether it be the economic infrastructure, the political infrastructure, the educational infrastructure, and to make no mistake, the educational infrastructure has been eroded by this wokeism and these unions that should be banned. Teachers should not be part of unions. Okay? There is no place in public education. There is no place in government for unions. Okay? We are being driven on the path of wokeism. We are being driven on a path of liberal, not even liberal, because this isn't a problem of liberal. I can stomach liberal. This is socialism. This is an attempt to divide and conquer. And this is a perfect example. What is going on in Washington, D.C. today, whoever sees what's going on there today and does not acknowledge that this is a completely incompetent administration, clueless, running around like a bunch of chickens with their heads cut off, who have no idea what's going on, no idea whatsoever. And then every time that they can throw in the narrative that they're concerned with Afghanistan, especially the women and girls, Every time they can throw that line in, it tells me even more what a bunch of BS this is. Your concern should be for everyone. You pulled out 3,000 United States troops and left tens of thousands of Afghani civilians who worked for the United States and whose lives are at jeopardy for being affiliated with the United States. You left United States personnel and you turned over hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars of military weapons, infrastructure, drones, hardware, software, information, computers. It's all there and it's been taken over by the Taliban because you didn't have the common sense to secure your assets and remove your assets before you took the policing away. But I guess that's part of defund the police or defund anything to do with law and order. You guys are a bunch of incompetents. Kamala Harris should be impeached. Joe Biden, impeached. Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, trash. Pure, unadulterated trash. Who have put their self-interest ahead of the best interest of the American people. Afghanistan will go down in history as the biggest military debacle in the history of the United States. And what do you think Taiwan is thinking right now? What do you think the Ukraine is thinking about what Russia got in mind? What do you think South Korea is thinking about what North Korea? Luckily, we still have 30,000 troops there. By the way, I'm sure you don't know that. There's 30,000 U.S. troops there doing exactly what the troops were doing in Afghanistan. Basically, a deterrent, okay? Not exactly, okay, I take that back. They weren't doing exactly the same thing, but they're a deterrent. So we do have 30,000 people. Is that a never-ending Korean war? No. That's a reason why we're there. Same way there was a reason why we were in Afghanistan, to keep the Taliban at bay. But that's neither here nor there. But back to the point. You don't think the Ukraine, Russia's saying, we can do whatever we want in the Ukraine. You don't think China's saying, hey, Taiwan, we can go at them. Because this old man in D.C., he's clueless. He is clueless. Joe Biden is clueless. And the same way that you're seeing this unfold, the rest of the world is seeing it unfold. And there is not an American ally that today thinks that they can count on the United States for anything. People, you've made your bed if you voted for Joe Biden. This is the disaster. This would never have happened under Trump. Yes, Trump did have an agreement in place to remove the troops, but the troops would not have been removed this way. And it's on record, okay? His administration is on record as saying that there was a plan in place with conditions and the safety of American personnel, Afghan personnel, everyone related to the operation, and the removal of the American equipment, infrastructure, intelligence, everything that we had there to be secured. And that no harm would come, as a condition, no harm would come to people affiliated helping the United States during their time in Afghanistan. None of that happened here. And he comes on saying, I'm more concerned with the lives of American soldiers. Joe, no American soldiers died there in 18 months. You're a liar. Joe Biden is a liar. Kamala Harris is a liar. I keep going back to Colbert on the show right after she was nominated. And he asked her, how can you be the vice president nominee for a man you called a racist? And she said, hey, it was a debate. It was only for the audience. It was a debate. In other words, I lied. In other words, it's okay to lie to the American people. It's okay to lie to get myself ahead. It's okay to put my own interest ahead of the American people's interest. That's Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris shouldn't even be dog catcher, let alone vice president of the United States. Joe Biden is president of the United States. Again, watch Weekend at Bernie's, and that's what you have as Joe Biden as the president of the United States. Weekend at Biden's. Weekend at Biden's. He doesn't know that he's alive. He doesn't know where he's at. He doesn't know what's going on. The only thing, he wakes up every morning and gets the mandate, gets the paperwork. This is what you got to say. This is what you got to address. This is what you got to do. And this is what you got to tackle. There is no doubt in my mind that that's what's happening here. And it will continue to happen as long as you continue to vote for the inane ineptitude that is represented by wokeism, the racists in this country who hide behind racism, who claim racism, who say they fight racism, but what they do is embrace racism and use it as their agenda and their platform to further their own self-interest. Their own self-interest, not anyone else's. They don't care about anyone else. If you told me these were people new into politics, Joe Biden has been there for 50 years. Nancy Pelosi has been there for 50 years. Chuck Schumer's been there for 40 years, okay? Nadler has been there for 30 years. All these people have been there forever. Why haven't they done anything? And why, the bigger question, why do you keep voting them in? Why do you keep voting them in? You're killing yourselves. You're shooting yourselves in the foot. Nothing good can possibly come out of a Biden-Harris administration. Ineptitude is what you have, and even if they know what the right thing to do is, they can't. Because you see, the reason that they are where they are is because they sold their souls. And now they have to do the bidding of the woke left. I hope that this strikes a chord. I hope that this hits home. I hope that this is something that you share and send around and give it to your friends and let them listen to this. And you know what? If you don't agree with it, tell me. I'm open. I want to learn where I'm wrong here. But I don't see right now any holes in this equation. The only hole I see right now is in Washington, D.C. The void, the huge void that exists in leadership. And the sad, sad state of affairs that when one of the most insignificant operations, military operations in U.S. history is ongoing and being undertaken, all our leaders are on vacation with the auto answer. Not in the office, please leave a message. Thank you.